Hello and welcome to Sectors Up Close. I'm Ramzan Karamali. Today we're looking at investing in all things water. And my guest is Peter Klein, Chief Investment Officer and founder of ALINE Wealth. Water is a diminishing resource in the face of rising global demand and climate change. But the performance of stocks within the sector has been underwhelming. Looking at the S&P Global Water Index, it may be trading higher this year, but it has still underperformed the overall market by some distance. There are a number of challenges facing the industry, from dealing with contamination to replacing outdated lead piping in the United States. The cost to rectify these will undoubtedly run into the hundreds of millions of dollars for highly regulated utilities. So should investors have a thirst for these stocks? Well, to help answer that and more, I'm joined by Peter Klein, founder and Chief Investment Officer at ALINE Wealth. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. Well, let's start with the performance of these stocks. Last year, the S&P Global Water Index rose around 12%, but that was about half of the main market. And this year, it's lagging behind as well. Why is that?
I think part and parcel to that underperformance in the water index is partly due to what is going up against. In other words, the index, the S&P 500, as we know, is extremely concentrated in just a handful of stocks, of which many of those are high multiple, growthy technology stocks. So it's a difficult measurement. I don't think it's apples to apples. The water sector is much more consistent and a less volatile sector.
So why do you believe water stocks are still worth investing in then?
I think part of it has to do with the economics, supply and demand. We have a decreasing supply of a required non-substitutable resource, water, that's used in everything from industry to healthcare. And we have a increasing demand because of globalization and urbanization. And so we have this sort of mismatch between supply and demand, which allows us to have an increasing price over time. And I think that's part and parcel to the opportunity in the water sector.
Now, there are a number of different types of stocks within the water segment. For example, utilities, they regularly give out dividends and they seem undervalued on the face of it. Is that the correct analysis?
Well, again, I think it's a selective process. There's many different companies that go into the utility sector in the water space. But let it be said that I do feel these companies have an excellent runway of free cash flow generation as well as dividend payments. So, yeah, I think investors would be well served in having a portion of their less volatile portfolio in the water utility sector.
And also within the sector as well, apart from utilities, are there other sectors within water that you're particularly fond of at the moment, and why?
Yeah, pipes, pumps, valves, metering, testing. This is the infrastructure sector, and it is an important area right now. We're seeing lots of demand coming from the recent infrastructure bill of a couple of years ago, and companies around the world, especially in the United States, putting money into fixing the infrastructure in the United States. And the EPA has estimated that as much as $1 billion will be spent in this area going forward. So it is something that we are very concerned. $1 trillion over the next 20 years to fix America's drinking and wastewater infrastructure problem. That's a lot of capital coming into this industry.
Peter, you talk about investment in this area. We're talking, hundreds of millions of dollars. You said maybe up to $1 trillion here. This can't just all come from government. So where else is it going to come from?
Well, in part, it comes from local governments as well as the federal government as they leverage the federal government's investments. But it's also companies themselves and going to private companies that utilize that water. So it is a wide and varied spectrum of players in the water sector because it is a critical resource that we all need for living and for commerce and for industry. So it's not something you could just push away and do tomorrow. It has to happen now. This is critical stuff.
Peter Klein, founder and Chief Investment Officer at ALINE Wealth. Many thanks for your insights. And that is your roundup of the water sector. I'm Ramzan Karamali, and this is Reuters.